Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another video and Happy New Year, and we're going to start it off with yet another Tokusatsu video. Again, here we go with Ultraman. Now, Ultraman at this point I think is probably the next most well-known superhero Tokusatsu after probably Power Rangers, right? I think it's at that point where it's really finding its way into the mainstream. It's not as mainstream as Power Rangers just yet, but it's definitely finding its way there, right? We've seen American licensed releases of Ultraman, movies and series, the Ultraman Marvel comic. We've also seen Mego figures at Walmart and various other places where you could find toys. So at this point, I would say it's probably the second most well known, right? We have the Ultraman Netflix series, the Ultraman manga that came out through Viz. So I would say probably after Power Rangers, although it's still pretty distant second, I would say Ultraman is at that point where it's the next most well-known one. Definitely still more well-known than Kamen Rider at this point, I would say. So although we are starting to get more Kamen Rider stuff coming in over here, as well as Kamen Rider 01 having its official release through Shout Factory, so hopefully that will help Kamen Rider's efforts, and maybe, who knows, maybe it'll end up being more popular than Ultraman at one point. But I think Ultraman has a little bit more of a head start at this point in terms of popularity, because we've just seen way more media for Ultraman within the last 5 to 10 years. It's crazy. So we have this article here from Bounding Into Comics. I'll link it in the description below, as I always do. But let's go over it here, because there's some interesting stuff in here. It says Tsuburaya Productions CEO vows to grow Ultraman fan base without making changes for Western audiences. In order to compete, I should say, on the world stage, we need to make use of Japan's identity. So when you hear a headline like that, immediately it makes you think that's cool. It sounds like their efforts to bring Ultraman over here are going to have minimal changes, right? Now, as far as an American adaptation goes, who knows what that means for that, or how much control Tsuburaya Productions wants to have with that. But let's read on and see what they have to say. With the company's Ultraman franchise slowly beginning to make its proper debut into the wider world following years of licensing troubles, Tsuburaya Productions CEO Takayuki, and I'm probably going to butcher this last name, Sukagoshi, has vowed to grow the Tokusatsu Heroes fan base without making changes to its sense of self for Western audiences, asserting that in order to compete on the world stage, we need to make use of Japan's identity and Japaneseness, as is a strong point in our stories. Sukagoshi outlined his vision for the future of Ultraman during an interview with Yahoo Japan, published on December 27th. Asked by site editor Yasuyuki Takai in the franchise if the franchise would be entering a new era of Ultraman that is different from the past, Sukagoshi replied, "We are developing a different type of Ultraman that what will change and is not the shape or form of Ultraman, but the content and nature of the work. It is possible to create a work that has a message that is easy for children to understand and a universal work that will move and satisfy adults," he continued, according to a machine translation of the interview. That's what I'd like to create with Ultraman. However, the details will be announced a little later. In the meantime, we will continue to produce works other than Ultraman. The future of Tsuburaya Productions is to use new technology to create new original works. Previously, in a situation not unlike that which formerly plagued the Macross series, Ultraman's licensing rights were at the center of an ownership dispute between Tsuburaya Productions, who created and produced the franchise, and Cheyo Productions, a Thailand-based studio which had helped the former produce the Ultraman movie, the Six Ultra Brothers versus the Monster Army, as well as the unrelated Tsuburaya Tokusatsu hero film Jumberg Ace and Giant. So we see a poster there. In 1976, Cheyo Productions founder and president Sempote Sin Duan Chai claimed that prior to his death, Noboru Tsuburaya, son of late Ultraman creator and Godzilla co-creator Eiji Tsuburaya, had given him the full rights to the Ultraman franchise outside of Japan in exchange for a financial loan. I wonder if that was a deal that was in writing, or if it was some kind of handshake deal. I would assume, though, it would be something that was contractually agreed to, if it is true, right? Though Tsuburaya Productions maintained that the document, which contained a number of errors, including the misnaming of each series under contention, was a forgery, the apparent fixation of Noburo's personal seal to the contract led both Japanese and Thai courts to legally recognize Sang Dun-chai's claim to the series. And it says here, however, in 2006, Tsuburaya Productions mounted a new legal campaign against Chayo Productions, suing the latter for copyright infringement and plagiarism over the creation of original Ultraman characters. That's interesting because I had no idea about any of this drama that Tsuburaya Productions had with this production company from Thailand. This is all news to me. So it says, eventually, following a series of ever-escalating appeals and countersuits, Tsuburaya Productions was awarded full rights to the series in 2019, a ruling which allowed the company to begin properly licensing and releasing their works outside of their home country. And yeah, we've seen, like I said, a huge influx of Ultraman stuff, right? We see the Ultraman Netflix series, obviously the manga. We're seeing figures, action figures pop up, the Mego action figures pop up in Walmarts and stuff like that, and wherever toys are sold. So the Marvel comic, of course. So we're seeing a lot more Ultraman these days over here, and this seems to be this could be the direct result of all that, right? I know that the Ultraman manga had come out some years ago through Viz, but like all this other stuff, the influx of the other stuff, comics and things like that. Eventually, Tsukugoshi moved to explain his production company. Excuse me, I'm getting so tongue-tied here. I'm reading so much. His production philosophy towards expanding Ultraman's presence on a global scale, particularly in Western markets, telling Takai, I have been thinking about the content of films, whether it's an action blockbuster about heroes or a general drama. It's based on personal conflict and growth. On the other hand, Japanese and Asian films have different ideas and concepts. One of them is the way we relate to nature, community, and society. In other words, the idea of coexistence, he said. We Japanese are a country blessed with nature, surrounded by the sea and mountains, and we have grown up working together in this environment. This is the message that characterizes our work. And not a bad message, right? I mean, if you've watched a lot of Ultraman, I mean, that's definitely, stuff that you see in there. For sure. Recognizing that there are a number of cultural standards in the West, especially in Hollywood, Tsukugoshi then told Takai that rather than change Ultraman in an attempt to garner more mass appeal, he believed that there was a chance for our unique works to be accepted around the world, even in the form of collaboration with Hollywood. So that's an interesting statement that he's making there, right? So it sounds to me like they're not... What he wants to do is basically keep Ultraman really to its roots, keep it as close to the source material as possible. That's the way I would interpret that, right? Like, he's basically saying, like, you don't really need to change much for Ultraman, even though we know that it's based in Japan. It's based on stuff that really characterizes our culture and our way of life and the way things are over here. It's something that we still think is good enough that even people from across the other side of the world will recognize and be able to appreciate it for what it is. And I think that there's some truth to that, right? Because we've seen it before with anime and things like that. And I think the same could be said for Tokusatsu. I think you can bring it over without really changing a whole lot, and people will still appreciate that. I mean, I think that's one of the things that makes things like Tokusatsu and anime so interesting, is knowing the culture that it comes from, right? And the fact that we see a lot of that expressed through that work. So the CEO then adamantly declared, from a Western perspective, most of the world's popular Japanese characters are already being made into films by Hollywood major studios and global media groups. However, Ultraman is not one of them. Interesting, right? Ultraman may be the last big IP left in Japan, affirmed Tsukugoshi. We have received many offers from overseas companies, but if we do the same thing in Hollywood when we go out into the world, Ultraman will be buried among the many hero characters in order to compete on the world stage. We need to make use of Japan's identity and Japaneseness as a strong point in our stories, and I think that that's totally fine. I mean, look, Ultraman's birthplace is Japan, right? The series is Japan, so why not keep it to its roots? I think that, again, it's still something that can appeal to people even on a world stage, knowing that. And it could be one of the reasons, now that I think about, when you hear things like this being said, I believe this could be the reason why we didn't see Ultraman in Ready Player One. For those of you that may not know this, in the Ready Player One novel, Ultraman, in that big battle at the end, you know, where the Gundam shows up and all that stuff, Ultraman was supposed to be a part of that battle as well, but he wasn't. And this could explain, I mean, it could also be due to, again, the licensing issues and stuff like that. They probably didn't get all that cleared, because I think, now that I think about it, they said this was cleared basically in 2019, if I remember correctly. I think that Ready Player One might have come out in 2018. I could be wrong about that, but let's look it up real quick. Let's see. I think that that Ready Player One, the movie, came out in 2018, so they might have not been clear with the licensing stuff, and that could explain why Ultraman didn't appear. But Ultraman was a part of that big melee at the end of the Ready Player One novel, and he was absent in the movie when it came out. So let's see if that's yeah, it came out in 2018. So obviously it started filming before then. So that's probably why. It probably has more to do with the licensing issue than this per se, but maybe this might have also played a role in that too, right? If they had managed to clear stuff beforehand, maybe they would have wanted to implement that too. And I think they would have, because everybody knows Mobile Suit Gundam, you know, is a Japanese IP. So this is the way I want to present the Ultraman brand. He added, this will lead to the creation of powerful works on a different level. Further, Sukagoshi stated that ultimately he wanted to send out new value added works that are not in the Hollywood standard, but have our unique genes from Japan to Asia and to the world. I would like to put a message into our products and events based on our works, he opined. I would like to work with people from different industries to come up with concrete ideas for this. I'm not opposed to that at all. I think that's great. Ultimately, Takai concluded the interview by asking the CEO for some insight into his own personal management policy, to which Sukagoshi replied, I value the relationships I have with the people I meet. No matter how much you talk about your vision or dream, you can't do anything alone, he observed. I want to work together with people both inside and outside the company who share my goals and ideas and who share my aspirations and awareness. The basis is people. Interesting. So he also says, currently outside of the latest entry of the Ultra series, Ultraman Traeger New Generation, Taiga Tsuburaya Productions is working on 2 new Ultraman films, with one intended to celebrate the franchise's 55-year legacy, and the other aimed at bringing more Western attention to the interstellar hero. In May 13th, 2022, Tsuburaya Productions is set to release Shin Ultraman, a cinematic reimagining of the hero as written and directed by Neon Genesis Evangelion creator Hideki Anno. Though details surrounding the film are scarce, it currently received the new theatrical poster courtesy of the recently held Tsuburaya Con 2021. And there we have it. It's probably going to be the device that's used for him to change. And this is additionally, the studio is also working with Netflix and Industrial Light and Magic to produce a CGI Ultraman film featuring an all-new storyline designed to honor the past mythology. According to a synopsis from Netflix, the film will follow Ken Sato, a superstar baseball player who returns to Japan to become the latest hero to carry the mantle of Ultraman. That sounds interesting. Should be pretty cool. His plans go awry, however, when he is compelled to raise a newborn kaiju monster, the offspring of his greatest enemy, as his own child. The synopsis concludes, Sato will also have to contend with his relationship with his estranged father and the schemes of the kaiju defense force. So that should make for a pretty interesting plot for that. But I like the idea of this, right? Of keeping Ultraman pretty much as close to its roots as possible. Just not really change much with it, because not really much needs to be changed. There's a lot of good stuff there with a lot of these properties as it is. So that's one of the things I think that gets lost sometimes when some of these shows are adapted for an American base. They worry too much about them being too Japanese, right, to adapt for an American audience. So they just won't get it. But like I said, as we've seen before with anime, where you don't really have to do all that much, although some of them still try to get mass appeal, and that usually gets a huge backlash from people, right? We've seen it before when we've had some of these Japanese series where some of the people involved in the dubbing for them decide to change some dialogue that changes the complete context of what was in the series originally in Japan, right? And that usually causes people to get upset. They usually don't like that. So I like that he thinks that, hey, look, we get that it's, very Japanese, but that's one of the things that we think is a strength for it, or at least that's what I take from this, right? So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds for Ultraman. The more different shows for Ultraman get an American release, get a Western release. I'm looking forward to seeing if that just only further helps Ultraman, which I have a pretty good feeling that it will. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And until next time, y'all know how it goes. The hunt continues.